for the inalienable dignity of the human person. We recognize when we have made mistakes in our history. That is what we are doing here today. That is what the Government of Canada, on your behalf, has done in cooperation with the affected communities in establishing these places of permanent memory to transmit to future generations the collective memory of what happened in these places. Yes, to discharge our sacred duty to remember, but also to ensure that we learn these lessons, that future generations will not be tempted by xenophobia, by prejudice, into treating fellow Canadians as enemy aliens. I want to especially thank those members of the affected communities for having revived the memory of what happened here. Because the memory was almost willfully forgotten. Of course, those who created these camps, those who put these proud Canadians to forced labor here at Haven Basin and at more than 20 other camps across the country, wanted to forget this period in our history. And so too did the internees. To add shame on shame, many of them came back to their homes after the war. And let us not forget that many of these places kept internees until 18 months following the armistice in November of 1918. If there was any evidence of bad faith and injustice in this policy of internment, that is it. And many, when they returned home, simply wanted to put it behind them. And I know amongst many of you, parents and grandparents, who were interned in these places, but who did not want to tell the stories. And so it was lost in history until some stubborn and inventive Canadian historians began to recover the story of the First World War internment operations. You know, Professor Lubomir Bluchiuk and others who uncovered this story and began to talk to the remaining internees who were still with us 15 and 20 years ago. And we recreated this history. And the affected communities, the Ukrainian community in the lead, supported by other Eastern and Central European Canadian cultural communities, came to their government to say, collectively we must remember. And that is precisely what we have done through the Community Historical Recognition Program and this National Historical Recognition Program. So, thank you for refusing to forget. Thank you for insisting on remembering and learning from this tragic injustice that is a mark on the dignified history of this great democracy. Friends, let us say, although they are no longer with us, let us say prayerfully, let us say through these acts of recognition, let us say to the internees that there was no reason for them to be ashamed. That they, yes, were proud sons and daughters of Europe, of Ukraine, of those of their cultural backgrounds, but they too were proud daughters and sons of Canada. Today we honor their memory, their sacrifice, their devotion to this country. We look back with deep regret on a policy that never should have been implemented. Let me make one more substantive point. At times of conflict and warfare, it's understandable that there are elevated concerns about national security. But do not allow historians today to whitewash what happened between 1915 and 1920 at Haven Basin and at the other sites. The historical record is clear. The Imperial government in London specifically told the Canadian authorities, during the First World War that there was no reason to treat the so-called subjects of Austro-Hungary as enemy aliens, that they did not pose a security risk. And so this was a policy designed, conceived, and executed, I believe the historical record shows, in bad faith. But today, we seek symbolically to correct that bad faith through an act of faith, through an act of collective memory. In a blessed falling asleep, grant them, O Lord, eternal rest unto thy departed servants, and make their memory to be eternal. Amen.